Hey, what is up, everybody?
And welcome back to another episode of Mile Higher Podcast, episode 353. And today, guys, we have a very interesting topic for you all. Something that...
It's very mile higher.
It is very mile higher.
Higher.
But it's also, it's very sad, very scary. And I've learned a lot about just this area and the cultivation of marijuana and how everything has changed so vastly over the years. And I always knew that legalization came with a lot of problems. I didn't realize how detrimental it was and how many lives it destroyed. So that element of it was really interesting. But we are also, we're talking about Murder Mountain and the Emerald Triangle, which is something I'd always heard of, but I never really dove in and got to learn as much as we did.
Which is in Northern California, way north of San Francisco, up in the mountains in the Redwood Forest up there.
Yeah.
It's kind of this, really, it's still the Wild West.
Yeah,
but that's where it kind of started. The history of it's deep, and that's where basically cannabis cultivation really got started here in the U.S. And
has changed a lot, though.
Yeah, well, it's went through a lot of different phases, some booms and some major lows. And with that came a lot of crime and a lot of murder. Hence
the name Murder Mountain.
Right.
And we are specifically going to be focusing on, for the most part, on the unsolved murder of Garret Rodriguez, which is incredibly sad.
Really cool
very
guy.
Confusing. He seemed like a great guy. But yeah, we do have a lot to go over, so we're going to get started. But before we begin, well, first of all, I'm Kendall.
I'm Josh.
What is up with that? Every week you just want to be French.
I just wish my name was not as I don't know. It just feels very plain.
It is very plain. I won't lie to you.
So Josh.
Josh. Which actually no, can you look up how many French people view Mile Higher? Because we can actually look at the stats for our country. At least look on for YouTube or something. It's always interesting to see. But
I can tell you right now, it's not a huge amount of people.
Well, I know there's a few of you out there.
So
let us know what you think of Josh's pronunciation of Josh. But also, of course, I need you guys to do your best attempt at a French version of your name, French accent. Who do we have?
Janelle? I don't
That's
know.
good, Janelle.
French.
Janelle. Jan.
Oh, Jan. That's it. You know what? That was pretty solid. You know what? I'm impressed by both of you.
Thank you. Also, to answer your question, it doesn't even list in the top, 10 it is.
Well,
so the lowest is Sweden, 0.5%.
I remember I used to be able to see even people, I remember I had just recently looked and we had viewers in, I'm on the top charts for my show in Pakistan, right?
What?
You can look at how many. I remember back in the day, I used to look up exact.
That's so random.
I know, but you can see, we have
yes, you can.
I might
viewers
be
and listeners
I'm on
all over the world.
I'm on mobile.
Regardless, you're forgetting about French Canadians.
Oh yeah, French Canadians too. So just people that speak French. How about people that learned French when they were in school?
Bonjour, oui, oui.
French Americans.
How do you say? How about Kendall?
Je m'appelle Janelle.
Hey,
Canada's 6.3.
Yeah, so there's
so
definitely
it's got to be some Frenchies there.
Yeah.
Kindle.
French is such a beautiful language.
Est-ce que je peux?
This all stems
Je m'appelle, oui, oui.
from me just saying, Josh.
Yes.
This 5-minute conversation.
Well, it needed to be had because you do this every week.
Parlez-vous français?
Oh, look at this. We got a French. Almost called you a fella, but when we
that little French fella.
I know.
That little French fella.
Oh, I know.
Okay.
All right. Let's get back to it.
We're rambling. We have a serious episode.
Exciting announcement, though.
Yes, a very, very exciting announcement that we've been wanting to tell you guys about for a while because we've had this in the works for months, but we finally get to tell you about it. We have been working on an Empower grant for a nonprofit called Our Rescue, which is fantastic. They work with partners and communities all around the globe to provide essential services for people who have been or could be sex trafficked and exploited in an effort to end sex trafficking and child exploitation while empowering survivors to reclaim their lives.
Our grant was for their global ESD canine program. Yes, canines. Dogs, who specifically specialize in electronic storage detection. which is really cool because most of us even know that was a thing.
I certainly didn't. This blew my mind. Dogs are incredible.
Dogs can sniff all sorts of things.
They do be sniffing.
And they can also use those sniffing skills amongst other skills that they have to help law enforcement find electronic storage devices like SD cards, external hard drives, and tablets during search warrants that could potentially contain child sexual abuse material. And specifically, these dogs are trained to detect a chemical scent that is found in the glue of these devices used to prevent overheating.
That's fascinating.
That's so
they can
crazy.
Smell. I mean, I always knew how, dogs can be used in investigations and law enforcement, obviously. But I had no idea, to specifically for electronic devices, and the glue is what gives it away.
Because obviously, when law enforcement's doing search warrants, it could be very easy to miss a little SD card or a micro SD card. Those things are so small.
Yep. And
it could contain, material that is illegal, and they might not find it otherwise without the help of a canine. And so, and what's interesting, a little fun fact, an ESD canine actually uncovered critical evidence and helped bring down Subway's infamous Jared Fogle.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So
shout out.
And want to talk about Monster? That guy is a
one of the
scary individual. In 2023 alone, our rescues canines led to 759 predator arrests and 230 victim rescues. That is incredible. And so what did we do?
We've decided to fund a canine to be trained and placed right here in Colorado. And they will graduate from training and start working in Loveland in November of this year.
Loveland is just north of Denver.
Yes.
So probably about an hour and a half north. Kind of fairly close to the mountains. But a great place for this dog to be, because lots of work up there for sure.
Yeah, and it's hard for states to get access to these dogs because training them they're really, really expensive, but definitely worth it. And so we're super happy to be able to do this. And it's thanks to all of you who support our content and support the Higher Hope Foundation that we were able to fund this dog. Now, what's really cool about it, that's one of the less cool things about the dog in general, but we do get to pick its name. And of course, we wanted you all to be part of that process. And as of now, as of the time that this episode is airing, the audience can vote. All of you can vote for your favorite name. And we selected a couple of names for each gender because we're not sure what gender the dog will be. But we sat down, had a meeting. Our whole team gave us suggestions, and then we narrowed them down and picked our top 3 female names and our top 3 male names. Now, just so you know, the voting form will be in the description and the show notes for this episode and on Higher Hope socials, which if you're not following Higher Hope, please give us a follow. It really does help us out, and it allows you to stay in the know about what we're doing with Higher Hope. We post on there quite a bit, and also our website, which is higherhope.org. We have information there, and it's a new website if you would like to see our revamped version. But anyway, voting closes on July 27th at midnight, so get your vote in. And here are the options. So for boys, we have Charlie, of course. If you know, you know. We have to honor our boy. But it also, the name Charlie, I didn't know this, means courage, freedom, and leadership. We also really like the name Orion. Obviously, Orion's belt, a little nod to space there, since we are space lovers. But it also means warrior, strength, and bravery. And then Ghost, very fitting for Mile Higher as well. Yeah. And for Lights Out, it means fearless and stealth. And then for girls, we picked Hope, of course, in honor of Higher Hope. That is my personal favorite. I don't know, I love all of the girls' names we picked. Also Rebel, which means independence, courage, and fighting spirit. And then Luma, which means light in darkness. And the voting closes on July 27th at midnight. And winning names for each gender will be announced on Higher Hope socials on Monday, July 28th at 12 p.m. MST. And from there, we'll keep you updated on everything going on with the dog.
And whether it's a boy or girl.
Yes. Yep. We will eventually, we'll have a picture. We are hoping to go and meet the dog in person eventually. But yeah, very exciting. And again, thank you to all of you who have made this happen. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump into the episode, starting with the history of Humboldt County. And this is interesting stuff, you guys.
Yeah, so Humboldt County is the, official name for what makes up this area known as the Emerald Triangle. And it's important to understand the history of Humboldt County to understand where it is today and kind of how all of these series of events unfold. But Humboldt County has continuously been settled for centuries, and within it, of what would be known as Humboldt County, various Native American tribes have used it for abundant resources within the area to establish permanent villages, and the rich soil allowed them to harvest and nurture wild plants. However, in 1848, Shasta County rancher Pearson Reading discovered gold in the Trinity Mountains, and soon the area was filled with pioneers and gold seekers from all across, the very still new United States of America. And in 1850, the first American settlement and future county seat was named Eureka, the classical Greek for I found it, which fun little fact I didn't know. While there wasn't much gold found in Humboldt County itself, the port cities became major hubs for transporting what was found in the hills and mountains. Plus, there was another resource early Californians found that they could extract, because they get there like, wow, these trees are really tall. They're really big. This would be great timber. So and they call this red gold because these massive 2,000-year-old redwoods in the area became a very lucrative crop, and other markets, including fishing, mining, and agriculture, soon took over as well. However, this extractive economy soon forced the natives in the area to abandon their centuries-old villages, and many were forced to relocate as over-extraction killed the resources and local militias forced them out. However, in the early 20th century, what had become known as Northern California's Redwood Curtain was beginning to part due to logging and tourism. People were coming to visit these ancient trees, and it soon outpaced the industry. And regulations were quickly implemented to stop the tree felling and mining operations in the area because, why are we destroying such a beautiful part of this state? And man, we got to go see the redwoods.
No,
I went as like a baby, practically like a toddler, and so I don't remember it at all. But the pictures just look incredible. Have either of you been to the redwoods?
I have. My mom and dad used to live over in Half Moon Bay, and then my mom worked for this film production company, and they lived in the redwoods, basically.
Oh, really? I didn't know
They were
that.
next door neighbors with George Lucas.
Whoa!
Which next door neighbors with George Lucas means like he's 2 miles away.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they were up in the redwoods, and it's beautiful. It is gorgeous.
Oh.
Massive trees, right?
Huge.
Unlike anything you see here in Colorado.
We have got to make a trip up there.
Yeah, Northern California just seems very, very beautiful. We want to go to Monterey Bay as well.
All of California is beautiful.
No, honestly, it is.
It's not like a bad part. Or I'm sure there is, but,
There's no safe like Simply Safe this summertime. What does feeling safe really mean to you? It means crawling up in your cozy bed, turning the lights off, locking your doors, and enabling your Simply Safe home security system, because they're going to make sure nobody comes sneaking in to your bedroom at night or breaking into your garage and stealing your bike. Nobody wants to have their personal space violated, especially your home. That's your safety net. That's your refuge. And so to make sure that is always the case, you need to get Simply Safe home security, because they're changing the game when it comes to home security. In fact, they are being proactive about it, not just reactive like a lot of other companies, because they have this technology called New Active Guard Outdoor Protection, which helps stop break-ins before they even happen. That means if somebody comes lurking around your property, somebody shows up to your door, they're walking up to your door with a crowbar, they're about to crowbar your door open, Simply Safe camera starts blinking, and an agent actually starts talking to this potential intruder and saying, "Hello, this is Simply Safe, you're now being recorded." And guess what? That perp's he's gonna think twice about what he's doing, and he's probably going to hightail it out of there is what's going to happen, because as soon as they start realizing they're being recorded and they're being watched, and you have a security system, it's going to deter them. They're going to leave. And if they proceed to continue breaking in, the authorities are going to be called, and they're going to be there hopefully in minutes, and could potentially save your life. I mean, security is something I don't joke around with. I invest heavily into my personal security and my family's safety because it's the most important thing. And you can give up a coffee in the morning to help pay for that security system, because monitoring plans with Simply Safe only cost $1 a day. I mean, it is such a deal. 4 million plus Americans trust Simply Safe. There's no contracts, no hidden fees. And they have systems. So they have packages that are made for all homes of all sizes, even apartments. And it's very, very affordable. So it can be like $100 to $300 just for the system, and then the monitoring is $1 a day or less. I mean, it is such a great deal. And when you actually break down the cost, it's like giving up a coffee or two a week, and you're protected all month long. There's a 60-day money-back guarantee, and the technology is top-notch. Honestly, I'm really impressed with the cameras. The indoor-outdoor cameras are great. And security systems are great for, obviously, the security part of it, but it's also just great to have eyes on your home, whether you're there or not. Maybe you leave your dog at home and you want to have an indoor camera, also double as a pet cam. There you go. You've got it. Or, like me, I've got outdoor cams on my house, and I can actually watch my pets outside in the backyard. So I can, keep an eye on them when I'm inside. There's just so many great reasons to, get a good security system, and SimpliSafe is truly the best. So visit simplisafe.com/milehigher to claim 50% off a new system with a professional monitoring plan and get your first month free. That's simplisafe.com/milehigher, because there's no safe like SimpliSafe. However, as the area deindustrialized, a new movement spread to the redwood cover forests of Humboldt County. Because in the 60s, we all know what the 60s were all about, but hippies who had been living in San Francisco and the Bay Area had become fed up with the overpriced living conditions and constant crackdowns from law enforcement and the entrance of hard drugs into their various social scenes that really made the Bay Area not that great of a place to be anymore. And so it was here that the Back to the Land movement really took hold, with many and more urban environments looking to, let's just get away from the city, all this materialism everywhere. Let's go live a simpler, cleaner life and live off the land in more rural areas. So Humboldt County was right there for the taking up north. And so many people left the Bay Area to go pursue cheaper cost of living up north. And in the early days, Back to the Land hippies took out loans, savings, and those that had trust funds would use that money to afford wide open spaces of just wild land. Some buying 40 acres for only $11,000.
That's so crazy.
It breaks down to $275
yeah,
an acre.
I did the math earlier.
An acre.
It's still pulled up.
That's what it is. I remember what it is. Just looking at photos and videos of Humboldt County, I mean, this is picturesque, outdoor, adventure land. I mean, you got rivers and lakes and forests and every outdoor activity you could possibly want to do. You could do it there. Isolation, quiet, dark skies.
Dream.
Honestly, kind of definitely my dream. This idea of back to the land, I think, is appealing to a lot of us.
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side, when you actually start looking at what that entails,
it's a lot of work.
It's hard. It's a hard life. It's not easy to live off the land or live off grid.
Lots of dedication.
And you just got to be a tough person. I mean,
yeah. I certainly don't have it in me. Like I said, I need to be close to a Taco Bell.
No.
Correct.
No, you're making your own Taco Bell at home.
I'm
always
not the same.
How did these people figure out how to plumb?
I know.
That's always my thing when it comes to
yeah.
Plumbing?
Yeah, how did they do that? How did they figure that out?
Well, a lot of them just had outhouses probably.
Yeah.
You just dig a hole in the ground.
But some of them
or you have buckets and
yeah.
Well, yeah, you got to figure out where your sewage is going to go. So either you figure out how to create septic tanks and septic plumbing for your toilet situation and leach fields, which is what a lot of people have to do in these types of rural areas. But then you still have to get that septic tank pumped because all the solid waste collects there. And then the liquid waste goes out to your leach field.
It's such a pain.
And waters your plants. There you go.
It sounds like you've been preparing, dude.
Well, I've had
we did it before.
Yeah, I've had a few septic tanks over the years, so I kind of know the deal with them. But
I never want to.
Because if you live, we had a house that had a well for water. We weren't plugged into city resources whatsoever, so we didn't have any plumbing going out, and we didn't have any water coming in from the city. It was all we were self-sufficient. We had a well.
It had its perks. I really did.
No, we had a well,
but it also, there was a lot.
Except the problem was that the septic tanks were way too close to the house. It was the septic tanks were built into the back patio. So you'd walk out and they were right there, the big green lids, if you've ever seen septic tanks before.
Mm-hmm.
And then, they fill up with poop.
Yeah, that's right. That's what they're there for.
I could tell you exactly how they were. If you're interested.
We're good.
But no, they probably weren't doing this. They were probably just doing, good old fashioned outhouse type situations, compost toilets, which Janelle's very familiar with.
Oh boy, you guys made me go camping, and
Chanel could never be a back to the land.
absolutely
person.
not.
No.
And why would I want to? I love a good AC. Josh, don't act like you don't love a good AC.
Yeah, he likes to say that he could live this life.
No,
but
you
he
could
couldn't.
not. I'm more, I think, conditioned than you are. If you
Whoa,
walk into a
no.
place without a king-size bed and an AC, you have a meltdown, and you know it's
so
true.
accurate.
You know
I'll
it's
just go to
true.
the local Home Depot and buy an AC unit.
There's not a local.
If I have
Home
electric
Depot.
power, I'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just get a solar battery, plug in my AC to it, and I'll be good to go.
Go without fiber internet.
Just get Starlink out there, and you're good to go.
Wow, we can't be supporting Starlink.
Hey, you know what? I think we have to separate the companies from the person a little bit. All right.
Okay, let's not even get into that conversation. Moving on.
Ian, could you live off the land?
No, man. I mean, even when I go to visit my mom, and she's not living off the land by any means, but she is like very rural. It's still tough.
Yeah.
How am I going to talk to these girls? There's no cell service.
How are you getting on
Yeah,
fucking
that's right.
Hinge?
Exactly,
Mm-mm.
man.
Mm-mm.
Let alone go on a date.
Oh,
What are you
physical
gonna do?
date.
Yeah.
dude, I've tried to date like when I visit my mom, and
The
for one,
locals.
yeah, and I'm like, I usually just feel bad, so I'm like, all right, I should be hanging out with my mother because I don't see her that often.
You're such a good son.
Mom, I'm going out on a date.
Yeah, well, see you later.
Oh, Susie from down the street.
That's my mom's name is Suzanne. That's crazy.
Little Susie.
Yeah.
So the hippies got to work building their communities, constructing everything from homes to community centers and schools. And honestly, it seemed like a great way of life.
Yeah, the era of like communes, man.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Commune living.
There
It's
is
big.
something so appealing about that. We have a family member that still lives in a commune, and it's not a weird thing or anything. But they're in like the Bay Area, so very similar to
Are you
this.
looking at
And
me?
Yeah.
Okay, don't know about them.
I've told you about them.
Okay.
They're a family that you were never that close with,
Got
but
it.
they are your family.
Okay.
But it's a great lifestyle. But anyway, their gardens grew enough to support those living in the new communities, and their fertile soil soon proved to be excellent for growing another crop, one of our favorite crops. Now, Vietnam veterans had been returning from war, with many traveling north to Humboldt County to find peace and solitude. And I can definitely see how this would be the perfect place to do that. So they settled near these hippie communities, carrying marijuana seeds for natural sativa strains that had grown in Thailand, Vietnam, and Laos. And the hippies had brought their own kind of weed too, growing modest gardens out of seeds that they had planted from their Mexican weed known as swag, which Josh tells me we've had before. I don't remember having
We've tried swag. Yeah.
We didn't like swag?
It's not great. No.
It's not swaggin'.
It wasn't very good, no.
Okay.
Seedy.
A little seedy.
Yeah, probably low THC.
Well, to me, all weed is good weed.
Mm.
However, as we all know, what happened when the war on drugs ramped up and international weed soon became impossible. Most of the U.S. consumption of marijuana had to come from homegrown plants, of course. So Humboldt not only had the right climate, but also the massive canopy of redwoods was used to hide their grow operations from potential government lookouts in the sky. But initially, selling the crop wasn't the goal of these first hippies. They genuinely grew for their own use, and when they did sell to others, they expected around $10 for an ounce. It was very, very simple.
$10 an ounce.
know,
I mean, it's
right?
just a gift at that point.
I know.
Labor of love there.
Well, that's what it was. That's what they were all about, love.
Sharing this good herb, man. Good medicine.
But soon, weed that was grown in Humboldt and other counties became famous for their quality and, most importantly, their quantity, baby. Because weed grown in what would become known as the Emerald Triangle supplied over 80% of the marijuana smoked across the United States, which I actually did not know that. And hippies were now flying to Waziristan and the Kush Mountains to get high-powered indica seeds. They soon practiced sinsemilla, which means isolating the female plant so that their pollen wasn't released and creating more potent strains.
Yeah, so they got all these seeds and they really got into the genetics of it, because it's actually very fascinating when you look at breeding cannabis plants. I mean, if you're not familiar with cannabis or haven't ever grown a cannabis plant, which I can say I have.
I
for a little
remember
bit.
that.
You tried. Let's
No,
let's
I
be clear.
I did successfully grow one plant to full harvest.
You did one, yeah.
Its yield
And it
was
was good.
very, very low, but it was good.
But what we
It
had was good. Yeah.
It was the experience. And then I also had a good buddy that I used to work with who literally had a grow operation in his house. He had a bedroom upstairs in his...
Up in Greeley, right?
No, here in one of my old IT buddies.
Oh, yeah. Oh, right. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Fishing with?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was big into growing weed, and he was a master at it, and he did it. I had kind of some major help. I had like an automated grow box type situation.
Yeah.
But he would do it from he did it like the hydro, I think it's hydro something. Hydroponic way. Yeah. So he was growing it that way. And it was just, it's the most magical thing. And when you see these plants,
they're beautiful,
grown from a seed to the final product, it is a truly magical experience. It's unlike any other plant. It almost feels like a living entity. Cannabis plants do. And so what you start learning though is that the genetics of these plants is so complex, and you can cross strain, and you can do all these different things to manipulate the genetics to create a new type of strain with new terpenes and blends and all these different things that so you can constantly evolve and create new cannabis essentially.
Yeah.
So that's what they were doing, trying to get different seeds, trying to take their favorite strains and then make new strains and
mix and match experimentation.
It's wild stuff.
It's
honestly very interesting. Really excited about this sponsor, Function Health. It's a health platform that gives you access to the kind of data most people never see and the insights to actually take action, because inside Function, you can test over 160 biomarkers from heart and hormones to toxins, inflammation, and stress. You can also access multi-region MRI and CT scans, all tracked in one secure place over time. So you get a near 360-degree view of what's actually happening inside of your body. I've got my Function Health account created, and I've got my blood draws scheduled. And I gotta say, I'm both excited and a little bit nervous to get my results, but I know in the long run, I'm gonna feel a whole lot better knowing what's going on beneath the skin. I'll be able to get information on myself that I wouldn't get anywhere else, all thanks to Function Health. So with Function Health, you're gonna give a little bit more blood, but you're going to get access to a lot more tests that your PCP is probably never going to give you in the first place. There's over 100 tests included in your Function Health membership. And here's just a few examples. So you've got a mastering stress test, which is your cortisol and DHEAS, which measure cortisol and DHEAS to evaluate how your body responds to stress and build resilience. Food and emotion, so testing insulin, vitamin D, looking at your vitamin deficiencies, to make sure, there's something you might need a supplement for, optimizing your hormones, appetite control, energy and immunity, fat burning, insulin, triglycerides, thyroid hormones. And then a clinician actually reviews the results and gives you some recommendations that might help you, reach your health goals. So it's truly a groundbreaking service. Like these days, doctors are great most of the time, but a lot of us, we want a little bit more information, and there's things that maybe you bring up to your doctor and your doctor's like, oh, don't worry about it. Or, oh, insurance probably won't cover that. But with this, you're paying out of pocket for this, but you are getting a lot more information than you'd ever get before. And it's backed by top health leaders like Dr. Mark Hyman, Dr. Andrew Huberman, and Dr. Jeremy London, who are all behind Function Health, by the way. And so you're just getting a really, really good deep dive view on the health of your body and mind and soul. And you really get a good look at what's going on, so you can hopefully make improvements on your health for the long term. So what's not to love about that? So learn more and join by using our link. The first 1,000 get $100 credit toward their membership. You heard that right. The first 1,000 people to sign up via our link get $100 credit toward their membership. Visit www.functionhealth.com/milehigher or use gift code MileHigher100. It's all together at sign up to own your health. That's functionhealth.com/milehigher.
And soon these small communities were bringing in tens of thousands of dollars, which were then invested back into the community. And the citizens of these growing communities could prop up their own schools, fire stations, and community centers. It looked like, from the old footage I've seen, great way of life. People seemed very happy. And the hemp from the weed was used to create textiles, which just further bolstered the community's economy. However, no matter how wholesome these early days seemed, they were still, of course, engaged in illegal activities at the time, and they garnered a reputation for not working with authorities, because how could they? And while the 70s were certainly lucrative for the Emerald Triangle and Humboldt in particular, they weren't at the status of the Green Rush, which would come in about a decade. But still, Humboldt was becoming known as a significant site for the entire country's use of cannabis. And of course, authorities and the government, they didn't want that shit, so they were wanting to stop it. In 1983, the California DOJ created a special task force that was composed of local, state, and federal agencies and set out to eradicate cannabis cultivation and sale throughout the state fully. The task force, known as the Campaign Against Marijuana Planting, also known as CAMP, would become a constant opposing force against the original growers in the Emerald Triangle. So they would use helicopters to survey the area, and CAMP would then descend on these grow sites and burn every marijuana plant in sight before arresting the growers who are responsible, which just, it's crazy to look back at it now that it's legal and how much has changed just it wasn't that long ago. Like when I first started using weed, it wasn't legal. And it's just crazy to think it hasn't been that long.
And it's not in a lot of places.
Yeah.
Still.
Right. True. I always forget. Here in Colorado, it's been...
Which is truly crazy. The fact that we can just drive 10 minutes down the road and find 3 weed shops.
Not even... we've literally got 5 minutes from the office.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then in other states, people are in prison for it.
Yep.
The black market's still very strong here in the U.S. because of how many states don't have it legalized still.
Yeah. God, I just always forget that that's still the case. But while the success of CAMP was mainly in the media, and a lot of people were like, wow, they're doing great work. Even people who were, actually doing the raids and burning the plants, who've later now spoken out like, God, at the time we thought we were really making a massive difference and really helping. But they were showcasing on the news these dramatic burnings of hundreds of pounds of the crop. But it did have a psychological effect on the growers in the region, of course. Most of them just moved their plants inside, but others grew tired of the military-style force constantly flying in and surveying their property.
Which led to another event in 1982, which would forever hold Humboldt County in infamy. And this is a very interesting case called San Francisco Witch Killers. And we actually did a whole episode on this case on Lights Out. So if you're interested in kind of hearing the whole story, because it's we're going to glaze over it here real quick, but it is fucking insane. And these 2 individuals who ultimately end up being responsible for at least 3 murders, if not countless more, are just absolutely crazy. Their whole story will blow you away. But one of the original growers in Humboldt County was a man named Scott Johnson, and Scott had settled his operation in Alder Point, a small rural area about 91 miles from Eureka, which Alder Point will be very important later on in Garret's case. But Scott wanted to build a community in the mountainous region, would often accept whoever came by to live and work on his farm. His best friend, Clark Stevens, had lived and worked with him on the farm for many years. However, a few years earlier, in 1977, a man named James Carson was in Phoenix, Arizona, when his first wife noticed extreme changes in his behavior. This guy was... I believe mentally ill, likely a psychopath, who used a lot of substances and was very into psychedelic drugs and did a lot of peyote was his kind of his drug of choice. So combine those different things, and he was also known to have a really bad temper. So his first wife and their daughter definitely feared for their safety, and so she ended up leaving him. Now he was alone and also very interested in the occult and Islam and just kind of combining a bunch of different religious and occult philosophies together. James then met a woman named Susan Barnes. And they believe they have yogic powers, and he believes she was kind of psychic and had these abilities. And so he meets Susan Barnes, and I think she really kind of helped reinforce some of these ideas that he had and was like, oh, no, you're right. And it was also like a doomsday ideology, like the end of the world's coming and we got to prepare. But basically Susan, she had been divorced and estranged from her 2 sons, and the 2 of them quickly got married and then became involved with more drugs, and they fell deeper into mysticism, and they ended up taking up the names Michael Bear and Susan Bear, like Bear, after James was given these names by God himself.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in 1980, after the couple had spent a year in Europe, they decided to join more like-minded people in San Francisco. They actually hung out on Haight-Ashbury for a while. And of course, they got more into the psychedelic scene, and into more hard drugs, and really into the counterculture. However, while they were involved with people who professed peace and love, James's ex-wife had grown frightened that he would harm her and her daughter. So she moved, because he was making all sorts of threats. And I mean, he just was starting to really go off the rails here. She moved multiple times so James would never know their location, and tried to warn people that they were very dangerous. In 1981, Susan and James had been living with a 23-year-old aspiring actress named Karen Barnes. No relation to Susan, but they were roommates. And while they had lived together for a year without an incident, in March of that year, they decided that Karen was a witch and needed to be punished. And Karen, sadly, was later found in their shared apartment, stabbed 13 times, and they ultimately hid her body in the basement. Susan and James immediately became prime suspects, but then they had already skipped town and were nowhere to be found. And so they went on the run. They were hiding out for a year in the mountains near Grants Pass, Oregon. Then the couple moved to Alder Point up there in Humboldt County in the spring of 1982, where they found work and lodging on Scott's farm. And while Scott was very open-minded and happy to have people from all walks of life working on his farm, other workers reported that James and Susan were very strange, and also clearly anarchists who were calling for a revolution and would not stop talking about the coming nuclear apocalypse. Because these guys he wrote a manifesto. He was talking about assassinating presidents and celebrities. I mean, it is a wild story. But in May of 1982, James got into an argument with Scott's best friend, Clark Stevens, if you remember. The altercation escalated until James just decided that, you know what, he's a witch and he needs to die. And so he shot him. Then Susan and James burned Clark before they went on the run once again. And they were eventually apprehended in January of 1983 after they murdered Charles Hellier on Route 101 in Sonoma County. He's just a random guy that picked them up, unfortunately. And really, Susan was definitely behind these murders because she was kind of convincing him that these people were witches. Mm-hmm. And so James would just be like, oh, okay, sounds good. And then they would carry out the murders. And then that's ultimately how they got the term coined by the media, the witch killers. However, Alder Point, as a result of these murders, received the nickname Murder Mountain due to their involvement, and the area never got rid of that reputation. And it seems like, by all accounts, that this is very much what it is today. There's plenty of YouTube channels and YouTubers that have gone up to Humboldt County and talked to locals there and stuff, and it still seems like, A, people don't want to talk about Murder Mountain, or people do still refer to Murder Mountain and the rumors surrounding it. But between the serial killers and increased police presence in Humboldt County, many of the original growers had come to the area for peace and quiet, right? That was the whole reason going up there in the beginning.
Yep.
Really came to find that was disappearing very quickly. And, there were some bad qualities that were starting to rear its heads in this area. Crime. You've got people being murdered, bodies being dumped, people are starting to go missing. And, it became a much harder place to live, especially for growers like Scott Johnson. But, despite this, he decided to remain.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those OG guys stayed through all this craziness.
Which I get, when you've been there for so long and you saw the original dream. You always had that hope that maybe things will turn around,
Yeah, well, and if you put your whole life savings into this and pour your heart and soul into the land that you got and everything,
don't even have the resources to leave, or it'd be very difficult.
Right.
But it wouldn't take long for the area to become swamped with more people than ever before. In 1996, Proposition 216 passed, which legalized medical marijuana across California, and that was a big change. However, without legislation passed surrounding the cultivation of cannabis, farmers in Humboldt were stuck in sort of a gray area. They were allowed up to 100 plants per property, but with no real way to enforce that policy, many farmers grew much, much more. And soon, growers were cultivating up to 1,000 plants, and sales on both the gray and black markets caused demand to spike even higher. What was once $1,600 for a pound grew to $5,200. With the higher price tags came, of course, more people wanting to cash in. And this period of early medical legalization days is known as the Green Rush. And soon Humboldt County was flooded with trimmigrants, which I've actually never heard that term, but it's people who flew in from across the world or traveled from across the world seeking seasonal work, trimming weed. And with this influx of people came more intense growers, many of whom had been involved with hard drugs as well. And this, of course, heightened the sense of criminality that was a far cry from the hippies of the late 60s and 70s. And now Humboldt had a true outlaw mentality, more crimes and more of an unwillingness to work with law enforcement who had now, no real way to enforce federal marijuana laws. So with the large influx of seasonal workers and more dangerous people running the grow operations, this led to a higher crime rate within the area, of course, including this staggering figure. In 2018, Humboldt County had the highest rate of reported missing persons per capita in the state of California. According to the figure, 717 per 100,000 people in the area went missing, which is mind-blowing. But it's important to note that this is not just due to criminality. The area's rural nature and poor cell service have also led to many family members filing missing persons report when in reality, the person they are looking for just can't contact them. Most famously, there was a woman named Becca Martinez who was supposedly in the area to work on a weed farm, and she was reported missing only to then turn up on a season of The Bachelor a few months later, which is pretty crazy. And she had actually contacted her mother a few weeks before the show aired, and her mom just had forgotten to report it back to the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office. So while Humboldt might have had the highest number of reported missing persons, it also had the highest number of found people who were once reported missing in the state. So that, explains it quite a lot. But there's still a lot that cannot be explained. So it is below California's average of people reported missing who were not found. However, certain areas like the Rancho Sequoia section of Murder Mountain maintained their dark reputations. Let's just be honest. Shopping, not as fun, not as easy as it sounds. Sometimes it sounds like a nice little activity like, oh, let's go shopping. No, it never is. I mean, maybe to some people, but not to me. I feel like to most people, you're not into shopping. And I personally just can't stand it. I don't like the crowds. I don't like having to rifle through items trying to find my size, or I find something I really like and they don't have my size. I hate dressing rooms more than anything else, just awful. And so that's why I love Stitch Fix. Now, you guys probably have heard me say many times that I am a paying customer of Stitch Fix. I have been for years. I truly stand by the service. I love it. I've gotten so many of my friends and family on it as well. And I love Stitch Fix because it makes the shopping experience and just the experience of dressing yourself so much easier. A personal stylist will send you pieces that match your size, your style, and everything is in your budget. There's no guesswork, no stress. It seriously could not be a more simple way of shopping. And you might be wondering how Stitch Fix works. Well, you take a quick style quiz, you share your size, your style, your budget, and get matched with a real human stylist who gets your vibe. We love a real human these days, don't we? And what I especially love about Stitch Fix is I can let my stylist know if I have something coming up, like I have an event where I want to wear a specific color, or I feel like, I don't have enough tops lately, or I don't have enough bottoms. I can ask for all tops, all bottoms. Whatever it is, I can completely customize my fix. And then what's also really great is you get a little styling card in there with your box that tells you how to style your items. And as someone who has really no fashion sense, a girl be needing that. But overall, to me, the best part is how easy it is because I love easy, okay? I am lazy. I don't want to have to go to the post office to make a return. So if I don't like something in my box, all I have to do is shove it into their prepaid mailing bag and stick it in my mailbox. And that's it. Like I said, shipping and returns are always free and there's no subscription required as well. I feel like a lot of people don't know that. Plus, you can get a free try-on on your first fix. So get started today at stitchfix.com/milehigher and get 20% off your first order when you buy 5 or more items. That's stitchfix.com/milehigher, stitchfix.com/milehigher.
Which brings us to 2009. A man named Robert Tennyson, also known as Bob the Builder, arrived in Humboldt County on January 21st, hoping to sell a motorcycle with his son and nephew. After they sold the motorcycle for cash and some weed, Bob's son and nephew drove back to their home in Modesto, while Bob planned to spend some time on the mountain with his friends, including a man named Chris Harrison. Initially, Bob was going to spend the night at a home in Alder Point, but then Chris picked him up and drove him to his property in Rancho Sequoia. The next morning, Chris turned up at the home in Alder Point where he had initially picked up Bob, asking if anyone had seen him. He explained that in the middle of the night, Bob, quote unquote, went crazy and ran off into the woods. The Humboldt Sheriff's Department wouldn't pick up the case until February 24th, even though Bob's mother had quickly reported him missing to our local sheriff's department. And to this day, Bob's body hasn't been found. In 2017, Chris Harrison took his own life and left a note that said, quote, "I was high as fuck on acid when I killed Robert Tennyson." And this case is still officially unsolved. However, another unsolved murder in Humboldt County has gripped the area ever since Garret Rodriguez went missing in 2013. As you'll see, there's a pattern amongst all these cases of very little law enforcement involvement, and I think it's very clear what the reasons are there.
Mm-hmm.
Why there's so little involvement. Obviously, this is a large area of land. Sheriff's Department's not that big. They can only work so hard on these things, but there's also, a lot of these people are involved in the gray and black markets, and it's the classic sort of point of view of some law enforcement out there of like, they're already criminals, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And as we'll see, some of them even flat out admit that it's not worth their time or effort to solve a murder of somebody who they deem is a criminal.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We see that all the time.
Or they don't agree with their lifestyle or what have you, or they think they just think of them as a drug dealer or something.
Yeah, which is so fucked.
But let's go ahead and get into Garret's story here, beginning with talking about who Garret was.
So Garret Allen Rodriguez was born on May 2nd, 1983 in San Diego, California to his parents Pamela and Val Buzz Rodriguez. And I just got to say, Val seems like an awesome dude, an incredible father. Very, very, very close to his son. And not much is known about Garret's early life, only that he loved the ocean. He spent a lot of time fishing and surfing and just hanging out. He was a very chill dude. And as he grew older, Garret never went anywhere without his fishing poles, which is important to note for later. And he one day dreamed of retiring in Mexico to spend his days fishing and hanging out on the beach. Garret had made connections back home in Ocean Beach with growers involved in cannabis cultivation up north in Humboldt County. While he had spent some time going to farms for seasonal work, he wouldn't go for a long-term stay until the early 2010s. And still, Val would receive a call from Garret like every 2 weeks or so when he returned to the more populated areas to grab supplies and groceries. But soon, Garret would be in reach of his dream. Val had told him that he had purchased a small plot of land on the beach in northern Mexico and would be willing to give it to Garret if he invested in the property and could make it livable. So Garret, of course, jumped at that opportunity. I mean, it's a dream. Who wouldn't, right? And he knew a way that he could make money quickly. So Garret contacted a man in Ocean Beach. Now, we've decided not to mention this man's name just for privacy. It is out there, but not super publicly. So we just think it's best that we don't say his name. But anyway, this man had been running the farm by himself, but Garret wanted to see if he could go in as a partner and increase the size of the operation. And this man agreed, and Garret went to the property in Alder Point on Murder Mountain. Now, it's important to note that Murder Mountain's outlaw mentality had only increased since the Green Rush days of the 1990s. And while the money increased, so did the isolation from the rest of Humboldt. Police officers reported how armed locals would escort them on ATVs anytime they entered the area, and as a result, law enforcement's presence in the area was basically non-existent. Still, people didn't just go to the mountain to engage in illegal behavior. Vietnam veteran John Riley had gone up to Alder Point after the war to find peace and quiet in the isolation, and many of his neighbors had done the same. Still, the area had been described as a Mad Max scenario. And Garret's aunt, Bonnie Taylor, who had lived in Northern California, was familiar with the rumors about Murder Mountain, and she urged him not to go up there. But still, Garret had his eye on that beach in Mexico and his dream life, and he knew that cultivation was going to be the fastest way to get there. And for a while, things were pretty relaxed. He spent his days working and fishing and had become known in the area as a chill, nice guy who was friendly with everyone. And that's kind of how he's always been described his whole life. And every few months, he returned to Ocean Beach to sell product to dispensaries and on the street and would make a ton of money, actually. Now, Garret's girlfriend in Ocean Beach, Eliza, wasn't so familiar with the world up in Humboldt County. She knew that he smoked, grew, and sold weed, but hadn't been exposed to the more outlaw elements of what that entailed. But still, they remained very close, and she was the first person he contacted whenever he returned home from Murder Mountain.
Yeah, and just to kind of explain the outlaw mentality a little bit and what that means.
Yeah.
So if you have all these people up here in these mountains, there's all these little farms, these little operations going on. You've got trimmigrants coming in, so people from all over coming in. And it's not like there's nothing professional about the operations going on. This is just like, hey, you want to come trim some weed for, $150 a day or something like that. And people are living on like air blow up mattresses inside of this grower's house, and nobody, there's no background checks being done. So and there's also other drugs, lots of other drugs up in this region. There's tons of meth up here. There's tons of cooks and meth houses. So there's lots of other substances that are being distributed, and as we mentioned, a lot of these workers are hooked on some of these harder drugs. So you have that, and there's a ton of guns. Everybody's armed up here because, with the exchange of the amounts of money that they're doing, the deals that they're doing for pounds and pounds of weed, obviously there's going to be lots of robberies going on. And so
you have to
carry a gun to protect yourself because people get robbed up there all the time. It's wild. And then when they get robbed, most of the time they're not calling the police to come to their illegal operation and help them with this robbery that just happened, because then they know their whole operation gets shut down. And so what ends up happening is that they just take the law in their own hands, and vigilante justice is what's going on up there. And then to also just add to, if you really think about the law enforcement perspective on this too, I mean, if you're an officer, you're on patrol, are you going to go driving up into these mountains on single lane highways with no cell service and probably limited radio communication by yourself at night?
Why would you?
Right. So it's like the danger to officers is very high. Like, obviously, if they get a group of them and they go up there, it's a lot different. But if you're just solo patrolling in these areas, these rural areas, it's very, very dangerous. So a lot of them just stay out of it. And especially if you've got guys on ATVs rolling up with rifles on their back, like, you're going to think twice about going up there unless you absolutely have to. And then they don't want the cops snooping around up there because they don't want them seeing because there's other things going on, and there's lots of trafficking going on. There's labor trafficking, sex trafficking. I mean, all elements of crime exist in Humboldt County.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a very, very dangerous place. And it seems like Garret may have underestimated that a little bit before he went up there. He probably knew there was some inherent danger there of being involved in a grow operation up in Humboldt County. I'm sure he's heard the rumors, because there's tons of rumors too.
Oh, yeah.
There's legends and rumors. People claim to see the Wendigo, claim to see Sasquatch up here in these mountains. There's even claims of cannibals up there. People have claimed there's serial killers running around. I mean, every scary thing you can think of, people have either claimed to have seen it firsthand or know somebody who has. And so it's really got this lore to it, this sort of creepy lore. And I think for good reason.
Yeah.
A lot of the times. So other friends of Garret's noticed a pattern whenever he came home. He'd sell product, make a ton of money. Like, for example, he brought home like $33,000 one time, and he'd come home and be like, oh, "I'm rich, I've got all this money." And his friends, one in particular, Remy LeBlanc, said Garret is the kind of guy who would give you his last dollar. So if someone wanted money, all they had to do was just ask, because Garret was very generous on his trips home. He'd pay for drinks or dinner out with his friends, and many of his longtime friends told him to, quote, "Stop acting like a big man flashing your cash. It makes you a mark."
Which obviously I didn't know him myself, but he doesn't strike me as someone who wanted to be seen as a big man flashing cash. Like, for him, making money and having money was to be able to live a happier life, to be able to do the things that he wanted to do, which was still, at the very end of the day, live a pretty simple life, but also to help those around him.
Yeah, but I do think the other part of it too is they're doing all this in cash. This money is not going into, via ACH into your bank account, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's carrying around loads of cash.
Right.
I mean, if he has $33,000 in cash, that's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're moving that around and pulling it out and pulling stacks out to pay for stuff, I think that might be what his friend kind of meant by it. But yeah, I mean, if he's buying everybody whatever they want, of course he's supplying the weed. He's got the weed.
But what I meant is, like, for him, it was not about.
It wasn't like an ego thing for him.
No,
per se.
It was just like he genuinely wanted to have a good time and wanted people around him to have a good time and be helpful. He was just a good, down to earth dude. I don't want it to get misconstrued.
Sure.
You know?
But these concerns were far from Garret's mind when he drove back to Humboldt after the holidays in 2012. He spent New Year's with his Aunt Bonnie, and he asked her if he could borrow an SUV, but when he found a truck he could purchase, Bonnie said goodbye and left him in the parking lot, not expecting this to be the last time that she saw him. Then in April of 2013, Val had not been contacted by Garret since he returned to Alder Point at the beginning of the year. And while he had been used to long periods of silence while on the mountain, Garret had always made it a point to contact his dad whenever he got to an area with cell service. And then when he learned that Garret hadn't contacted his Ocean Beach girlfriend, Eliza, since he left, Val knew something was very wrong. So he officially reported Garret missing to the Humboldt County Sheriff's Department on April 25th, 2013. And since Bonnie lived real close to the area, she became the family's primary focal point for the investigation. And early on, she was worried that the Sheriff's Department wasn't taking his case seriously. In May, she contacted a man named Todd Fulton who worked with the Sheriff's Department. And according to Bonnie, he wasn't concerned and said, Garret is probably fine. He'll probably show up at your doorstep one day. He also insisted that there was no proof that Garret had even made it back up to Humboldt, despite telling his family that he had been living and working near Alder Point. And some officers didn't care at all either. One told Bonnie, quote, he's just another one of those losers that come up here, and that Garret was just another drug dealer to them. It was just appalling.
Yeah.
It's very sad.
Yep.
That just because of lifestyle choices that you automatically get, your life is less. Yep. Worth less. It's sad.
So only a few months after Garret's disappearance, the family hired a private investigator in Humboldt named Chris Cook. And Ian actually reached out to this private investigator. And do you want to speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to say, like, how little coverage there is in this case. Like, there's the Murder Mountain docuseries, which we watched in preparation. But that's really the majority of coverage.
Yeah.
And it all stops after 2018 when the series came out. It seems like interest in Garret's case has waned, which is why I reached out to Chris. And she was very nice, and she still wants to get the word out about Garret's case. But she also didn't really have any updates. It does kind of seem like everything stopped after 2018, after the release of the docuseries.
And what's the series called again? I forget.
Murder
It's
Mountain.
just called Murder Mountain.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. It's a 6-part series. It was really, really good. Some great footage in the beginning too, just historical footage that it's always interesting to watch. But
yeah, it's on Netflix.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they kind of interweave Garrett's story throughout it.
A little bit throughout every episode. But I think episode 4 and 5 are mainly focused on. Yeah.
Yeah, it really seems like, because the biggest thing is investigators are just like, it's all hearsay. Like everything revolving around what happened and stuff is all hearsay, and they really need like some concrete evidence to really like go and make an arrest or do something, or somebody to come forward and with some information that can really, I guess, convince them of everything that happened. But yeah, it's really unfortunate, which is, I mean, another reason why it's good to keep this stuff out there.
Yep.
Because you never know. You never know who might know something or know somebody, and remind them like, hey, you remember Garret?
Well, and it's keeping the pressure on law enforcement too. Anytime there's any
we're not going to just forget about it and just it's not going to just go away.
Because they were very unhappy with that series, law enforcement. So I'm not going to lie. There was a point in time where I just stopped going to the doctor. I didn't trust doctors anymore. I had such bad experiences with every doctor I saw for years on end that I just stopped going for years on end. Until I realized, I really should get into the doctor. And I actually found ZocDoc through Josh. I don't even know. Do you remember how you found ZocDoc? It was before they were sponsoring us.
Yeah, it was when it first came out, I think.
Yeah. Thankfully you did.
I think I literally just Google searched like book a doctor online or something like that.
Yeah, it probably popped
Book
up.
doctor fast.
Well, that's exactly what it does.
Don't call doctor's office, book appointment.
But it also allows you to see reviews. And that was the big game changer for me, is I could really, cycle through these real verified reviews from real patients. And I have found all of my medical professionals through ZocDoc. I swear, literally everyone. My eye doctor, what's that called? An optometrist? That is right. Optometrist. My dermatologist I found through ZocDoc. She's amazing. My skin is finally clear for the first time in years. I can't even believe it. That's all thanks to her. But even you can find your dentist, your PCP.
You can even find therapists.
Yeah.
You can find psychiatrists.
Yep.
You can find acupuncturist.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, any medical profession or specialty, they've got it.
Yep.
And you can filter by your insurance, which is the best feature of all.
Yeah,
so you can make sure you can find somebody who takes your insurance.
There's nothing worse than when you finally think you found a good doctor and you start going down that road and realize, oops, they don't take my insurance. I just wasted a ton of time. And the best part about ZocDoc is it's free. You guys, it's a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and click instantly to book an appointment. And with ZocDoc, you can book in-network appointments with more than 100,000 doctors across every specialty, like all the ones Josh just listed, but also urgent care. A lot of people don't know that about ZocDoc. But you can filter for doctors, like Josh said, who take your insurance, are located nearby, and are a good fit for any medical need you may have, and are highly rated by verified patients. And once you find that right doctor, you can see their actual appointment openings, choose a time slot that works for you, and then click instantly to book a visit. And what's so great is appointments made through ZocDoc happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. And more often than not, you can even get same-day appointments. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/milehire to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/milehire, ZocDoc.com/milehire. But Chris, excellent. Thank you so much for taking the time to reach out to us. And she's the real deal. She had been in law enforcement as an investigator for 27 years before she actually became a PI after retirement. And since there were always so many potential missing persons cases in Humboldt, Chris was very selective about the cases that she took on, and she really just had to be. And Garret seemed very strange and interesting to her. And for one, she knew about the culture of Murder Mountain, of course, and that law enforcement would not go up there. Plus, they still maintained that Garret had never made his way up to Humboldt and knew that the first step would be proving that he returned to Alder Point at the beginning of 2013. Then Garret's family held a fundraiser in Ocean Beach for Chris's investigation, and they did generate enough cash for Chris to open an anonymous tip line for Garret's case and devote her time to follow up on potential leads. And for a while, the tips didn't lead anywhere. The most credible early one came from two women who claimed to work on the same farm as Garret. They said that the owner, the man that Garret knew from Ocean Beach, that we mentioned earlier, who we can't name, was dangerous and had been running guns for Hell's Angels in addition to his weed cultivation. And then there was also speculation that after Garret had returned to Humboldt, he wanted to be fully bought out from his share of the farm and leave Murder Mountain for good. Then in May, two residents of Alder Point named Sherry and LaDonna called into the tip line, saying that they had seen Garret's truck driven by another man and was parked on the Jewett Ranch property. Chris and associates took photos of the truck and confirmed it was the same one that Garret had brought and driven up to Humboldt in 2012. However, despite this, the sheriff's department still did not want to process the truck as evidence, as it was in private hands on private property, of course, not being driven by the man it was registered to. Then one evening, while speaking to a man in Alder Point associated with the Jewett Ranch property, Sherry asked how come Garret's truck showed up. He responded, "Oh, you mean the dead guy?" And he even commented that Garret's foot was still sticking out of his shallow grave. And Sherry, obviously, was shocked, thinking to herself, why is this guy bragging about it in this way? And after Sherry and LaDonna kept asking around, they learned that the property Garret worked on was guarded by meth heads. quote, meth heads. And the unnamed man whom Garret was in business with was probably using himself. They also learned that this man owed Garret $50,000. Then finally, Sherry met with a man who claimed to have been there on the night that Garret was killed. The witness said that Garret showed up at the property one night asking for $50,000, and a short argument broke out before the man told Garret that he would run inside and grab it, as in the money, but that's not what he grabbed. When he walked back onto the porch, he shot and killed Garret Rodriguez at point-blank range. Then, this man went to the witness and said, "You work here. Get this shit cleaned up," before he and the murderer buried Garret at the Jewett Ranch. The man told Sherry that he moved Garrett's body because he was scared that the man would shoot him too.
So Chris took all this information to the sheriff at the time, Sheriff Mike Downey, including the name of the alleged killer, and had Sherry make a statement to them as well. And still, Sheriff Downey said there was not enough probable cause to make an arrest or detention at the time. The Rodriguez family said, quote, Sheriff Downey did not make an effort at all, which seems like at the time there was quite a bit there. I mean, they have a lot of information of what happened. They have the person, at least enough to warrant an investigation at the very least, and actually go and talk to this individual and do something. Nothing. For several more months, Chris and the Rodriguez family learned more about this alleged killer. He was originally from Indiana, and there were rumors that he'd been involved with kidnapping and murder there before he moved to California. They even told the sheriff's department where Garrett's body was likely buried, and still nothing, saying that everything was just hearsay. It reached a point where investigating officers stopped answering calls from people interested in Garrett's case. It was just so fucked up. Like, people won't even take your call about his case.
Insane.
The alleged killer had left the area shortly after Garrett's truck was discovered, but returned in the fall of 2013. But when he returned, locals said he was boastful about his invincibility, which that also tells you something. Soon, others on the mountain, especially the older generation, were growing tired of this man. Neil Decker, one of the original growers, had a soft spot for Garret since he had lost his own son. His best friend was Scott Johnson, the man who had hired the witch killers, and at this point he had become, sort of the dad of the mountain. And on Thanksgiving of 2013, Neil and Scott were together when Neil said, quote, I'm going to do something about Garret. The two men kept drinking, and then egged on by others, they finally grabbed their guns and ATVs and started driving towards the alleged killer's home. Vigilante Justice, as I was talking about earlier. As they drove, Vietnam veteran John Riley saw the caravan drive past his home and decided to follow along with his son to see what the commotion was all about. When they arrived, John initially stayed away from the crowd in case people started shooting at each other. The alleged killer met them outside when Neil and Scott asked, "What did you do to Garret?" Then Neil shot the man in the calf before pistol whipping him in the head. The gun went off and the bullet grazed his ear. They shot him an additional time in the breast before they asked, "Where is the body buried?" At this point, John and his son approached and offered to drive them to the location. While 8 men were there for the altercation, only Neil, Scott, John's son, and a man named Bob Holtzclaw went with the alleged killer to the potential grave site on Jewett Ranch. John drove 11 miles until they reached the site, and after only digging for a few minutes, they found Garrett's remains buried amongst the marijuana plants. John Riley said, "A certain power takes over the atmosphere around death, and everything slows down." The Alder Point 8, as they would be called, drove the alleged to the hospital, dumped his ass outside, and then reported their findings to the police. On November 30th, the Humboldt Sheriff's Department finally recovered Garrett's remains, and after an autopsy, it was revealed that he'd been shot in the mouth before the bullet severed his spinal cord, which would have killed him instantly. The Rodriguez family finally had their loved one back, obviously not in the way that they hoped this would turn out. And they ended up cremating his remains, and they were scattered on the beach. And Val said, quote, "He was a part of me." Just absolutely horrible. And, to just find out that your son was thrown away.
I know.
Just like trash.
Val's interviews in that series broke my heart. I mean, brought me to tears several times. The love between the two of them seemed very, very special and unique. Just horrible. But I'm glad at the very least they at least have his remains and were able to lay him to rest. I'm sure that meant a lot.
We'll go ahead and play a little news coverage reporting on the Alder Point 8 and recovering Garret's remains.
It's on a missing persons case that today turned into a murder investigation. 10 News broke the story on Twitter this morning that a body found in rural Humboldt County was identified as 29-year-old Ocean Beach resident Garret Rodriguez. 10 News reporter Michael Chen looks at why the area he was found in is referred to as Murder Mountain and the role it may have played in his death.
In this photo taken last Christmas Eve, Garret Rodriguez is all smiles standing next to his best friend Remy LeBlanc inside her San Diego home. The next day, he moved from San Diego to Northern California.
The day that he left my house, the last time anyone saw him, I wish I would have just held on to him a little bit longer.
Rodriguez, an avid surfer and fisherman, was headed to Humboldt County to work on a medical marijuana ranch in hopes of earning money and buying a house with his dad in Mexico. LeBlanc says he was working at a location referred to as Murder Mountain with a history of violence and missing people. Do you think he knew of the dangers of the job?
Everyone knows there's danger on that mountain, but I think that he trusted everyone he was with.
After Rodriguez arrived in Humboldt County, he called LeBlanc. In mid-January, he phoned another friend and complained of spotty cell service. Deputies say it was his father and not his associates on the marijuana farm that reported Rodriguez missing in April. His truck was found in a remote area in May. In late November, deputies say a phone tip led to a rural roadside grave and a body, now identified as Rodriguez. Detectives are revealing little about their case, but did say the marijuana farm industry, which includes some cartel-funded farms, is often accompanied by violence.
I've had a couple of recent home invasions where people armed have kicked in doors to residences and held them down at gunpoint, tied them up, and took the marijuana.
Back in San Diego,
I think my heart has just been ripped out.
there is grief and anguish.
Although this gives us some closure, we want justice.
A private eye hired by the family says the person who led deputies to the body has confessed to the murder. There's also speculation this may be connected to the recent kidnapping and shooting of a landowner by 8 men. Deputies would not comment on either theory.
However, it was quickly becoming apparent to those back in Humboldt that law enforcement was not interested in apprehending the alleged, but rather going after the Alder Point 8. So a search warrant was executed on the alleged property, and multiple pages of this warrant are sealed as they likely pertain to Garret's case, of course. But still, most of the warrant focused on finding materials related to the Thanksgiving incident. They did speak to the alleged while he was in the hospital, but did not ask about Garret, of course, which is really frustrating. But Neil and Scott left town, and John gave a statement to authorities, so they were clear that he was not involved in the violence and was just there when the alleged showed them the location of Garret's body. And now the authorities had a statement that included a confession in addition to Garret's body, and still they needed cold facts to justify an arrest. Val said that he felt like law enforcement were toothless lions and that the Alder Point 8 were, quote, my heroes. So the FBI ended up getting involved in the case, and they searched for DNA evidence, spoke with the family and Chris, but still nothing else happened with Garret's case. Scott put a man named Matt Brown in charge of his farm while he and Neil were on the run. However, Matt was a skinhead who was incredibly rough with the workers on Scott's property, assaulting one of them and shooting others with a paintball gun. This guy is absolutely a monster. And when Scott and Neil returned to Alder Point, Neil strongly disliked Matt, often calling him a, quote, bitch boy. And Matt thought that Neil wanted him dead. And so he started carrying his shotgun around everywhere. And then on July 18th, 2014, Scott asked Matt to come to his house to discuss the business. Matt walked upstairs and looked for tools while Neil approached him in the bedroom, and the two of them began arguing about something Matt had been saying around town and told him to keep my name out of your mouth. Then, according to Matt, Neil appeared to reach into his waistband, and Matt shot him at close range with a shotgun, killing Neil instantly. Matt jumped from the second story before Neil's body was recovered by Scott, and according to him and other witnesses, Neil was still smiling when they carried his body back downstairs. Matt hid in Alder Point, staying at the shack in the forested area, and Scott gave his location to authorities multiple times in the following days. However, they never acted on it, saying that he was likely armed and too dangerous, which it's like, yeah, but that's why y'all have guns as well. This is your job. It is dangerous. But then on July 21st, Scott felt like he had to do something about it. He had become a, quote, zombie and just kept repeating Neil's murder story over and over. His girlfriend Hannah begged Scott to leave Alder Point and go down south. And he said, quote, I brought the motherfucker here. It's my business. And told her that he was just going to check on Matt's shack and asked why he killed Neil.
He went down with a man named Redhead Dave and an unnamed militiaman, and all three were heavily armed. When they approached the shack, they realized that Matt wasn't inside, and they scattered in all different directions looking for him. However, according to Redhead Dave, the militiaman hadn't recognized Scott from a distance since he had put on a camo hat after they split up. Thinking he was Matt, the militiaman shot and killed Scott, one of the original growers on Murder Mountain. However, this whole situation is very fishy, and honestly, it's kind of confusing. According to Redhead Dave, they put Scott's body in the truck bed, but he rolled off onto the dirt road, and they just left him there. It was wild. And to this day, Scott's murder is still officially unsolved. And only a few days later, a SWAT team burst into Matt's cabin and arrested him for Neil's murder. On the drive out, Matt saw Scott's body still lying in the middle of the road. Law enforcement asked him if he knew anything about the body, and he said, quote, that's Scott Johnson. He was like my dad. Matt Brown is currently serving 40 years to life for murdering Neil. And then in 2017, Bob Holtzclaw, the other witness to the alleged confession of Garrett's killer, got into a fight with Zach Harrison. The Harrison family had been infamous, as Zach's brother Chris was the alleged murderer of Robert Tennyson. The two often fought, and Bob always pulled out his gun to end the argument. However, on September 23rd, things ended differently. The two fought as they always had, but this time Bob made a rape joke at Zach's expense. And Zach had been abused as a child, and this comment triggered him. So in response, Zach went and grabbed his rifle and shot Bob to death. For over half a year, Zach went on the run from police, and at one point, he jumped from a bridge and stripped naked to avoid capture. He even covered his naked body with mud to avoid being caught on thermal cameras, and survived in Oregon for multiple months without any food for 10 days straight. Finally, police received a tip that he was in Eureka, and Zach Harrison was arrested on June 6, 2017, and 2 years later, he was sentenced to 50 years to life in prison for the murder of Bob Holtzclaw. As of 2018, the only witnesses to the confession for Garrett's murder were John Riley and his son, John Jr. John met with Val that year and told him that, I am eternally grateful to you, and John was able to return Garrett's fishing poles to his father. John had grabbed the fishing poles from some of the people who worked on the farm with the alleged killer. While John said he'd be willing to testify in Garrett's case, his son wasn't so sure. And still, their current whereabouts as of 2025 are unknown, unfortunately.
As is just like so much with this case, I think.
Yeah.
You know, again, like it's a very rural, disconnected area,
Yeah.
and the docuseries, like they were able to actually get out there and speak to a lot of these people. However, it just kind of seems like in the years since, no one else has been able to do that yet. And so there's just like, it's hit a wall. All these people, like John Riley, the other members of the Alder Point 8 who weren't killed, we just don't know where they are or what they think of everything that's been going on. Just because it's disconnected from everything.
Yeah, makes sense. So in 2018, marijuana sales were legalized in California. And while this was a massive win for the consumer, it was disastrous for the original growers in Humboldt County. And this is something that I didn't realize the extent of how hard it was for all of them. And there was one man specifically interviewed in the series that said, I don't think the voter considered how this was going to affect the farmers. And at the time, I certainly didn't even think about it. The campaign for the bill, which was financed by billionaires like Sean Parker and Peter Thiel.
Yeah.
Peter Thiel. I always mess up his name.
It's a weird, and he's a weird guy.
He's a weird motherfucker.
Don't like him.
Do not. Anyway, they were focused on large-scale corporations getting started in the marijuana business as opposed to the independent farmers who had been selling weed since the 60s, because we can't have anything good, can we? It has to all... Everything these days has to support the billionaires first, right? The poor billionaires.
Mm-hmm.
But for a grower to go fully legal, the process would take nearly a year. And this blew my mind, especially when they're going over all the documents in the series. But it could cost them up to $100,000, which is just not doable. It just wiped out tons of them. Plus, the price of weed had fallen to record lows. While they were once getting over $5,000 per pound, growers were lucky if they got a grant. Sometimes it was like $500-$600. And in addition, legalization meant enforcement on the black market, which had been operating in the gray area since medical sales were legalized in the 90s. And many felt like it was simply just not worth it, which makes total sense. And they left the area to make way for the large corporate grows. And as a result, Alder Point and many rural areas in the Emerald Triangle are even more impoverished today than before. A new sheriff, William Hansel, was elected in 2018, and he ran unopposed. And while he has tried to be more transparent about unsolved cases in Humboldt County, there have been no new public updates in either Garrett's or Scott's cases. The alleged murderer is theorized to be back in Indiana, but this is still unconfirmed. And after the series Murder Mountain was released in 2018, the Humboldt Sheriff's Department stated this in an open letter. The producers of Murder Mountain did not accurately report our involvement in the Garret Rodriguez case, nor did it report the FBI involvement. Humboldt County Sheriff's Office investigators forwarded this case to the Humboldt County District Attorney's Office for review. The District Attorney's Office determined that it would not file charges at that time due to lack of evidence. The FBI is working alongside us on this case, and they attempted to get a case to be reviewed and filed as a federal case by the United States Attorney out of San Francisco. The United States Attorney also would not file on this case because of the lack of evidence. However, in response to their letter, Garrett's aunt Bonnie Taylor wrote this. I had hoped that Sheriff Hansel would invite a new era of professionalism into the department, but after the recent HCSO press release regarding the Murder Mountain series, I now feel that HCSO will only continue to hide behind excuses. It is also clear to me that they only sought to discredit the documentary because it exposes their incompetence in the case. And Bonnie, I agree. I think we can all agree to that. And in 2018, Bonnie did start a GoFundMe to help pay for Chris's work investigating Garrett's case. And while the status of that investigation is unclear, we can confirm that Chris wants to keep Garrett's story alive. And we just wanted to put it out there. If anyone involved in Garrett's case is interested, we would love to get you guys a Hope grant through our foundation, Higher Hope. So let us know. We will look out for an email from you. We'll have that information in the description box and show notes of the episode. But we wanted to end today's episode with a really nice memorial that was made for Garret.
Super cool.
Yeah.
They had a couple reggae bands out at a park in Ocean Beach in Garrett's memory. Mm-hmm. Slightly Stupid.
Hey,
great band.
Yes, it is.
So, yeah. Hopefully YouTube will allow us to keep it in there.
Yeah, we might have to put our own music overlaid, but
at least for those listening on the audio, you'll hear the actual audio. But
yeah, YouTube's lame, but
a great way to leave this episode.
Yeah, but we'll see you guys next week. And until then, keep on taking your mind a mile higher.